Hey there everybody, it's Game Dev Dad, and I'm going to continue on with the Apple TV development stuff that I did last week. So this week we will make we'll just take the demo app, the demo game app, and then we will add some controller. So well, actually, let me just show you real quick. So I'm going to first of all go into Xcode. So remember, we have to run the Xcode beta 7.1 that we downloaded. So it should appear in your applications as Xcode beta. And then we'll just start with File, New, Project. Okay, let me just get this over on the window. Okay, so you basically see here that you're going to have in the Xcode beta 7.1, you're going to have a tvOS section. So then just pick Application Game. We'll just call this Remote Demo. Objectives, I'm going to do it in Objective-C. I'll use SpriteKit, even though we're not going to be doing too much of that right now. And then I'm just going to save it here. Replace the ones that there. Okay, so you guys have probably done this before. So you basically get the game view controller. The game view controller here will instantiate a scene, this game scene.sks file, and then you'll have basically a game scene class here that does kind of the work. So what this demo does when you run it on an iPhone is basically it creates this label that says hello world. And it puts it at font size 65 in the very middle of the screen. So let's just change that to hello Apple TV developers. And then it checks touches, and if it finds a touch, it basically finds the location of that touch, and it puts a spaceship sprite scaled down into the, I think it's the center location of the screen as well. Location. Oh no, it puts it on the location of your touch. So let's just run this. I'm going to run this in the emulator so you guys can see it. So just build it. I have the emulator running here. Okay, so it says Apple TV developers. I have my little fake remote open here. Remember, you get that by going to the simulator hardware show Apple TV remote. Just show you, make sure you guys hardware show Apple TV remote, and that'll pop up. Okay, remember what I said in the last video is that clicking on here will actually act like a hard press on the touchpad. So you'll have that clickable, but if you just want to touch the touchpad, then you hold down the Option key, and that's like a touch. So basically that was recognized as a touch in the code, but the problem is that the location of the touch was not recognized. So if I go up to the top corner here, you'd expect the spaceship to appear up here in the top corner, but it doesn't, because the remote doesn't actually register the same as touches. It actually registers as a gamepad. So no matter where I am on here, whenever I push the Option key, it just keeps showing a spaceship right in the middle. So let's stop that program. And basically what you have to do is look in here that you discover some GC controllers, and then it is going to actually appear as a, I wonder if I have the other ones up here. It appears as what's called a micro, I don't think I have it on this screen. Micro. It's called a GC. Micro gamepad, I think. Okay, so here's the class reference for it. So, you know, there's a GC extended gamepad and a GC gamepad and a GC micro gamepad is the new one. So this is actually what the remote will show up as. But enable, or in order to get the remote, what you have to do is you have to discover connected controllers to your device. So here it says how to discover wireless controllers, and the function it mentions here is this start wireless controller discovery with completion handler. So we are going to call that, and then that will give us a callback. So if we look at this, there's basically going to be two callbacks. One is going to be connected. Let's see, connected. So you're going to get, yeah, this GC controller did connect notification, and then there's also a GC controller did disconnect notification. So you have to do that basically to pull the controllers, and the remote will actually show up as one of those GC microcontrollers. Okay, so let's add some code to do that. And what I'm going to do is just quickly do the discovery part in this video, and then in the next video we'll kind of hook it up as actually kind of a game remote. But just to get started, let me create a new file in here, and I'm going to make a header file, and let's call this gamepad manager. That one. Let's actually put it in here. Okay, so we got a gamepad manager. Let's just move it down so it's kind of alphabetical. And I don't care about that because I'm going to reuse it. And then basically, let me just copy some code from here so that you guys don't have to listen to me type or watch me type. Okay, so this is going to be just a simple class for now. What I'm going to do is import the foundation stuff. Basically, I have an interface here with a Boolean variable inside of it. It's going to inherit from NSObject. And here is the static. So this is going to be a singleton, the gamepad manager. So there's a static member function here that returns a gamepad manager pointer called shared instance. If you've ever used any singletons before, shared instance is kind of the Objective-C standard. You might also, in other languages, you see the instance or the I, or you see the get instance method, but seems like shared instance is common on Objective-C. And then I'm going to make I'm going to make a member function for discovering those controllers, and that's going to call this start wireless controller discovery with completion handler. So right now it's going to be pretty simple, and in the next video, of course, we'll expand upon this so that we can actually, you know, get button pressed and all of that sort of stuff. But let's just do the discovery real quick. Okay, so I'm going to now add the Objective-C file for that. I'm going to also call that gamepad manager and create it. Okay, let's move that up here so everything's nice and together. And here we go. I'm not going to do that. What I'm actually going to do is import that gamepad manager.h, since that's where I've already got the foundation class in. Okay, so let me copy a little bit of code in here. No, let's copy a little bit at a time. Okay, so first of all, first of all, we're going to have to import the game controller stuff, because that or the class, because this GC controller class is what we're going to use to call this discovery and all that stuff. Okay, and then we need to basically synthesize. Well, let's first put our implementation block in here. We're going to implement gamepad manager. Okay, and then let's synthesize the variable. maybe we should change that actually to like is discovered. That's a little bit, makes a little bit more sense. Is discovered. Okay. Okay, so we have that variable synthesized, and then let me get the singleton stuff done. So, I mean, if you look up Objective-C singletons, you'll see this paradigm kind of mentioned a lot of the time. So the plus means it's a static method, of course. Shared instance is what we're going to call it. It's going to return a gamepad manager pointer. And this is using, can't remember which one I looked up. So I looked this one up, and they gave some examples of how to implement singletons in Objective-C. Like I said, all the examples pretty much follow this paradigm. But the first one he uses is using this Grand Central Dispatch thread safe way of doing a singleton. So this also seems to be pretty standard, and that's why I chose it. But basically, I just declare a static variable here called gamepad manager, or that's of type gamepad manager pointer, and it's called shared gamepad manager. Initialize it to nil, and then dispatch a token, and then basically allocate just once this gamepad manager and return it. So every time in the code we call shared instance, then it will only allocate that gamepad manager once, which is what you want in a singleton. So, okay, and then we'll just do the Objective-C constructor, which is the init function, which we're not really going to do much in. So let's just kind of do is discovered equals false. That should get us there. And then the dealloc we don't actually really need, but just for kind of clarity's sake, we don't need it because it's using the GCD, right? So GCD will kind of clean up this. But you know, as we expand this class, of course, we'll probably need to put some stuff in here if we keep track of some dynamic memory or something like that. So anyway, we've got the basics of our class implemented here. And what we want to do now is I'd like to implement this, this member function. So this is a class member function. That's what the minus is. It's not static, it's a class member function. And we're going to implement that to be able to discover these controllers. Okay, so let's go into discover here, and let me type it in so that, because this is kind of important. So basically it's just a void function, and it's called discover. Okay, and I always end up typing that. So first of all, let's just do a log. Let's just say gamepad manager discover called, something like that, just so we know that it was called. Okay, and then I'm going to copy these lines because they're pretty long, but let me copy them one at a time. So this is one part that from the forums and stuff I think a lot of people miss, that basically you need to add observers here. So in the notification center, so here's the NS notification center, it grabs the default center and it adds an observer to this class, which is the self. And I'm going to add something which is a function called onGamepadDidConnect. And the one I'm going to add is for GC controller did connect notification. So this basically sets up a notification that will call the member function, this member function in this class when we get a GC controller did connect notification. So this is really important, obviously, because otherwise we wouldn't actually trap those notifications in this class. Okay, so let's do that. So this is going to be the second one, which is on gamepad did disconnect, and it's going to be it's going to do the GC controller did disconnect notification. Okay, so that sets up the two notifications. We're going to have to implement these methods, obviously, and then the important thing is to call this start wireless controller discovery with completion handler. that's just pretty easy to call. So you just do this, and we are pretty much done. So basically it calls a static method called start wireless controller discovery with completion handler, nil parameter, and GC controller. So we don't use the callback function there. We're using these notifications here. Okay, that's it. Now we should start writing these ones. So let's do the disconnect first, because I'm not going to actually implement much on that one in this video. I'm just going to put a log here. And let's log as on gamepad did disconnect, and that's all I'm going to do here. Okay, but the one that we're going to spend a lot more time on is the on gamepad did connect. So let me just grab that code. Let's just do it in alphabetical order. Okay, so on gamepad did connect notification. So you basically check the notification object. We cast that object as a GC controller. So we're going to call that element. And then here we check, is the element an extended gamepad? Is the element a micro gamepad? Or is the element a gamepad? So these are the different types of GC controllers that it will find. And as I mentioned earlier, the remote on the Apple TV is going to be this micro gamepad here. So you'll notice these arrows right here because I haven't implemented these methods yet. But let me just go through each one of these blocks. So if it's an extended gamepad, what I really do is cast it as an extended gamepad, and then I set a handler here. So gamepad extended.value changed handler. So every time that gamepad value changes at all, it's going to call this method with the GC extended gamepad and with the controller element. And so what I'm basically going to do is call handle gamepad extended with that information. And we'll just get some output logs here so that we can see it's working. Then the same thing for micro gamepad. The only difference is that I have a GC micro gamepad instead of a GC extended gamepad. And the handler, of course, is a little different because it has different parameters as well. Micro gamepad there, and I'm going to call handle gamepad micro. And then for just a regular gamepad, same thing. I get a GC gamepad here and handle gamepad regular. So I'll just get this. I'm just going to stub in the regular one and the extended one right now. And again, I'll complete this for the next video and not go over it too much because we're just going to work on the Apple TV Remote for a while. But let me put the handle gamepad regular here, and I'll just put a to do in there just to remind me that I have to actually do this. And then let's get the gamepad extended. So that goes there. And then the one that we are going to spend a little bit more time on is the gamepad micro one. I'm not going to do too much because I want to keep this video fairly short. But what I'm going to do is just show a little bit on how to get data from that. So if you are looking at, so let's just make sure this builds. Okay, so it actually build the arrows one way. Okay, so the GC, do I have that here? So here's the micro gamepad. As you dive into here, you'll see that, I'll just show the micro area here. So I get a GC micro gamepad, and in that gamepad there is a D-pad property. And inside that D-pad property, there is button A, button X, stuff like that. So we'll look at that. We'll look into that a little bit more. But what I'm doing here is just saying if the element I have is the D-pad that came into here, so the D-pad values have changed. So remember, let me just remind you that this handle gamepad micro gets called every time the value changes. So this is just saying, okay, well, if the element that got sent along is the D-pad, and if the button's pressed, then let's get the let's compute the origin offset, which is the offset from the center. So there's just some math that just changes the x-axis value and the y-axis value, so I get a number between negative 0 and 1, basically. And actually, let's take that out. Why you guys don't need to be confused with that. Let's just go CG point origin equals CG point. Make gamepad dot D-pad dot x-axis and gamepad dot D-pad dot y-axis. Okay, we'll just do the raw values and we'll worry about that later. Oh, sorry. X-axis, and we got to get the actual value from there. Y-axis dot value. Okay, and then I'm just going to log basically that I got handle gamepad micro at this thing. Okay, that this space or this coordinate. Okay, let's make sure that builds. Okay, now. Oh, it's called origin. Okay. That's why I don't like copying and pasting, because I always end up making mistakes. Okay, so it builds fine. Let's try to actually run it on the emulator here. And you will notice an unfortunate thing actually happens. Okay, so let's look at here and make sure that you're actually seeing okay, so as you can see, it didn't find anything to do with the control. Oh, that's because I actually have to call it. So in gamescene.m, I'm not actually calling this. So let's import that. Import gamepad manager.h, and then in our game scene, we don't want to do it in touches began. We probably want to do it. Let's see, where should we do it here? Let's do it under the label here. So let's just make a game. Later on, we'll probably have a property for this so that we hold it inside here. Just call it GP manager equals, and we're going to use gamepad manager, so because it's a static method and it was called shared instance. So that should basically allocate the singleton and send me back the GP manager. And then let's just go GP manager discover, I think it was, yeah. So that should discover the things, the controllers. Okay, so let's just step through this, right? So, you know, game view controller will open up the game scene and basically call did move to view of the game scene in this game scene.m. And then as we make the label and add that to the scene, then we'll also instantiate this gamepad manager, and then we'll call gamepad manager discover. And in gamepad manager discover, we will do the allocation or the setup of these notifications, and we'll set up our own callback functions for those notifications. And then here we call start wireless controller discover with completion handler, and we'll get, once we get these notifications and trap them, it should come down here, and if it finds the micro gamepad, it will go through and create this kind of internal function, or whatever they call these things, that calls handle gamepad micro, and then handle gamepad micro will check the state of the buttons and button A and whether the D-pad is changed, and should log something out to the display. Okay, let's try to run that. So here it's running over here. Okay, and again, you'll notice that discovery was called this time, which is much better because it wasn't called before, but it didn't find any controllers, any remotes. And the reason for that is because this simulated remote does not actually register as one of those GC controllers. So I heard actually that the update allows you to pair your physical remote with the simulator, but I haven't actually tried that since I'm lucky enough to have one of the dev kits. So what I'll do now is I'm going to change this here to my dev kit, and I'm going to stop that and actually run it on the dev kit. So check out the other video if you don't know how to get this set up so that you can run things on the dev kit. My last video showed quickly how to do that, but this video is going to actually work on some coding. Okay, so it's now running on the dev kit, and now we should notice here that it does discover that remote. There's nothing really to see. I'll take a video of the Apple TV so you guys can see it, but there's nothing really to see other than the hello. But I'll take a video and I'll composite or edit it in here. So yeah, it just says hello Apple TV developers, and I'm not going to pop up a sprite or anything. We're just going to look at the log output. But anyway, just so you prove so here it says gamepad discovery called, and you'll notice this time that it got to this micro gamepad. So it did find that in-game controller did connect, and the vendor name is a remote. So let me just look at the code real quick. Oh, it's right here. So if you look right here, after it does the, it found that the element is a micro gamepad and made this handler, then it prints out micro gamepad here. So that's what we're seeing there. And then if all works fine, if I actually push the A button, so if I look at the handler right now, so if the element is a D-pad change, and if the gamepad.button A is pressed, it should print out where it was pressed. So I will press towards this side, and as you'll see, it printed out x equals that value, those values. So this is x equals -1 since I pressed. So 1 and -1 I'm getting. And I go all the way to the left and all the way to the right. Okay, so as you can see, it's discovering the remote and we're getting values out of there. So let's, sorry about that noise. Let's actually, we can actually put other things in here, of course. So let's say we could use the gamepad.dpad is, what the heck is it? Look. Gamepad micro dot D-pad dot button A button X. I thought there was an is pressed in here. And controller. Let me pause and I'll get back to you. Okay, sorry, I'm just going to, so this is like printing out only when button A is pressed down, but I'm just going to, on other points, if the button's not pressed down, which basically means that the D-pad element has changed. And this would be like if you're touching, just touching the thing instead of pressing it and clicking it. Then I'm going to print out the same stuff, same information. So, but let me say that this is touched, and then this one is pressed, because the A button is pushing down. So if you can hear, see how it's actually, you push down to click, but if you just touch it, then your D-pad values will change, and you'll get a call in here because the D-pad element actually got sent to this change handler. So I'm going to print out that here as a touch, and then here as a press. The one other thing that I'm going to want to do is I just noticed that there's this reports absolute D-pad values. Game controllers that implement the micro gamepad usually implement the D-pad in hardware as a touchpad. The default value is no, which means the locations where the user first touches the touchpad is assumed to be the neutral. So the first time you touch your finger on the D-pad, it'll set that as 0, 0, and then your next touch is the delta from that 0, 0. So instead, I'm going to set this to yes, so that all values are calculated relative to the physical center of that touchpad. So let's try to do that when we initialize, maybe here. So let's go gamepad micro dot what does Mexico reports absolute default value equals yes. So let's see if that actually gives us real values. Okay, so let's run this again. And it found our micro gamepad. Now, when I just touch this without clicking it, I should have actually seen something, but I didn't. But anyway, let's see if the clicks. So here, it seems that everything is. So that's like Y is at the very top, I'm pushing it. So it's 1, and then Y is at the very bottom, so it's like close to -1. If I go close to the center, I'm getting like a 0, 0. Okay, so that's how you actually recognize input on the Apple TV. It doesn't come as out of the box as recognizing touches like it does on the iPhone or the iPad. So you actually have to do a little bit of work recognizing the gamepads, but it's not too hard once you know that you register these notifications with callbacks and call start wireless controller discovery with completion handler. So there's still some management stuff we're going to have to do, you know, so when controllers are disconnected, we haven't implemented. We should actually get rid of these notifications in our dealloc, so we'll do that. But I'll clean up this code, and then we'll do another video where we're actually getting the input button values, and we'll do some get pressed and get released and get triggered and those kind of common gamepad functions for different buttons, and the virtual D-pad and things like that. And then we can start working on little game. Okay, so please comment if you have any questions or suggestions. You know, I haven't really done a lot of Objective-C programming in my career, so I'm obviously not an Objective-C expert, but if you do have any suggestions or comments, or you think I'm doing things really wrong, then let me know, and I'll, you know, never too old to learn, so I'm still young enough to learn from you guys. Please also subscribe and comment. I do listen to comments, and I do reply to comments as much as I can, because ultimately I want to do development videos that you guys are interested in seeing and learning from. So please let me know, and have a good night. I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.